Hey, welcome to Chapter 10, Section 2, the House of Representatives of the United States of America. This is really the one that's based on the people, represents equal amount just about per thousand, that kind of stuff. So that it doesn't matter how large or small state is geographically, it has everything to do with how many people are in it. All right, let's get this to the full screen. Okay, so the House itself looks like this. You can actually, it will sit 435 people, and actually, except for a couple of places, right here and right here, actually right here, these anyone can actually sit wherever they want to. There's no assigned seating as such, except up front, where you actually get up here in the top. Usually, you get the Speaker of the House, which is the most important person in the House, and we're actually going to talk about more about that later. And they usually have the United States flag right behind them. But to run the floor, they actually can get someone else in the House to actually do it for them. In this particular one, this is not Boehner, I'm sorry, who is the Speaker of the House. On the left-hand side, you get where the Democrats can debate. On here, the Republicans can debate. And all of these desks are behind here are really people just to monitor and do the daily journal and stuff like that about all the things that were said that get recorded, and they publish this kind of stuff and then record all the votes, things like that. All right, Jim Himes is our guy, and goes around, tries to help out people. Obviously, guys like this who he's, in this picture, smiling with. Jim is. Let me see if this works. Come on, click. All right, this is the actual district, the 4th district from the state of Connecticut. From Greenwich, Stamford, to us, Norwalk, up to Ridgefield, down to Bridgeport, and oddly enough incorporates Oxford, Connecticut, which actually the only way to get there from here is to go over a dam to get to Oxford. This is actually the rest of this site is actually Jim's site, and you can talk about there are things about him, the issues of the day, things he cares about, legislative resources, and anything in the district itself. So actually, some other time, you could probably have some fun going through that. So let's get back. Okay, full. Now, this is actually Jim's biography. Now, if you actually want to put this on hold and kind of read the whole thing, you can. Jim himself is a very young man. He's 46 years old. Vaguely familiar to me. Yeah. Actually, he and I are actually the same year we were born. He went to a different college. You can read it and see about that. But he was brought up partly in Peru and Colombia, so he has a very different background than a lot of congressmen. And he actually made a ton of money working for a big corporation, and then actually worked for a nonprofit organization creating certain kinds of housing in the New York metropolitan area. So take a quick look on that. Put it on hold, and you can take a quick look on that. Let's see if I can get the rest of this in there. All right. So his next election is coming up. He's in the middle of his second term of office, which we had from the first section. But his next election is November 2012, which is oddly enough coming up very soon. All right, so to being in the House of Representatives, what kind of qualifications do you need? So we're really only going to talk about the formal ones, all right, which are basically these things. You have to be 25 years old by the time that you actually get sworn in. You have to be a citizen of the United States for 7 years. And you have to live in the state you're trying to represent. You do not have to come from the district. Himes can live in Hartford and run for the 4th district. As long as he lives in Connecticut, he's fine. All right, so the size and the terms. Well, like we already said, it's 435 seats, the entire group. And all of them are on 2-year terms. So when this election comes up in November, technically every single one of them could lose re-election, and you could have a completely different 435 people. but actually the opposite's true. About 90% of the people that actually go for re-election will be elected back to the House. All right. When they get elected in November, but they get sworn in January 3rd. Almost exclusively, that's when Congress itself will start up. All right, and what Congress are we in? We mean it in a general term, but we also mean it obviously here, a specific term. So, which one is it? 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. We are in the second session of the 112th Congress. Congratulations to all who got that. All right, so the election itself, and this is both simple and gets a little complex. All right, the Tuesday following the first Monday in November in even-numbered years, if you own a cat or whatever, it's a little convoluted, except you always have the day off. You're really aware usually of when when the election actually comes around. So hold on here. So of the 435 districts, what states get which districts? I mean, a certain amount. Here you can see this is 2,000. Actually, this is a zoomed in version of 2,000 here. You see 435, 435. Okay, so we'll get there in a second about why that number is kind of frozen there. We had 281,000 people. So every 10 years, they actually take what's called a census, and we find out that we're going to have to split up this 281 million through 435 places in the country. All right. And actually here, for Connecticut, you will see that we have 3,400,000, and we have 5 congressional districts. Okay. You can see actually the similarity down here with Oregon and Oklahoma. They both have roughly the same amount of people that we did when the census was taken, and they both have 5 actual members. And you can see things like, where is it? California up here has 53 as opposed to our 5, and that's a pretty democratic area. And then where's Texas? Texas, where they have 32, which are mostly Republican. And so you can actually get some hints about the way the Congress will look like depending on those things. But those are all independent single districts. Every district has one person that comes from it. So the state may have 532 House members, but it actually gets broken up. Wait a second. I mentioned that there's a census. Every 10 years, starting from 1790, they've taken a census to see how many people there are in the country and where they are. And it really, really matters. It matters in the politics that we're talking about right now for the House of Representatives, but it also, when those guys actually get their job, they're fighting over dollars, the taxes that we pay. So it actually matters if a state gets stronger or loses votes in the actual House. So what they did was, though, it was getting larger and larger and larger, and the more states were coming in. So finally, in 1929, they created the Reapportionment Act of 1929, which basically said that they're going to cap it at 435. All right, that's it. We're done. 435, and we're constantly going to have to reuse that number to see who fits into it. But from this, you can actually see where regions have changed. Okay. Over here, back to the grid we were already in, if you actually look at places like Connecticut, New York, Illinois, Illinois is up here, you'll see that all these guys actually lost one. Michigan and up these the mid Rust Belt and northern states. If you look at California, where's Florida? Texas, a lot of these places that are down south and southwest, they're actually gaining them over time. So you can actually see the trend where people are moving, getting jobs, and how the country itself is actually changing from this kind of thing. All right, so what are they going to do? Let me get gerrymandering in. So, Connecticut loses one. Texas gains one. Every 10 years, they get to reevaluate where all the borders of these districts are, since only one person can come from them. And the party in charge usually finagles, for political purposes, to try to get more of their guys in the House of Representatives. When it takes ridiculous proportions, we usually call it gerrymandering. And this is a cartoon from the early 1800s when the governor of Massachusetts, a guy named Geary, tried to, if you actually know anything about around Boston, here's Lynn. These are all right, the north of Boston. And it had this convoluted up and around series of towns to try to get one particular party to win. Well, you think it's funny back then, but we haven't stopped doing this in any way, shape, or form. Here's a district in North Carolina. Durham, North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, as it says right in front of you. It's 150 miles long. And look at this. I mean, parts right here through here where you can see the highlighter, these are actually like basically I-85. There are barely a few houses on either side. So some people sued. This was a Democratic district, and the Republicans said, "Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous." But if you remember what I said, what's the group that supports the Democrats the most? And those are the African Americans. Well, the vast majority of this gerrymandered North Carolina district are actually African Americans, and they sued based on that you cannot do it for race, and they won. North Carolina played around by taking some of the districts in Durham away from it to make it a purely African American, to take it away from being a purely African American district, but it was able to last the last 20 years, 30 years, 20 years, so that they tinkered with it and it kind of allowed. But the Republicans are not through yet. They still want to fight this one a little bit. But here's another one. Let me get this in a little bit better. Louisiana. Everything here in the yellow is unbelievable that this could possibly be in the same district. Down here is New Orleans. You got 1, 2, 3, all kind of compact, but 4 spreads up and around, and a lot of that's backcountry with not a whole lot of people in it. I'd love to know what exactly the point was of trying to create that. All right. The other abuse, so gerrymandering was one abuse, but here's one it is gerrymandering, but what they did was, in Westbury versus Sanders, some people in Georgia actually got upset at the idea that there wasn't the same amount of people in each district. All right? It actually says in the Constitution you're more or less supposed to have that. But Georgia started playing games with it. They would put 19,000 in one district and maybe 100,000 in another district. Why? Because they wanted to basically take the strength of the cities away from the rural areas. So the rural areas had hardly anybody in them, and they had these big, huge districts, and they crammed as many people in the cities into one as much as they could get away with. And they did this for years. Westbury versus Sanders was a court case that went to the Supreme Court that said, you can't do that. What's fascinating about Connecticut, actually, is with computers, they've been able to actually get seriously, down to the neighborhood, the street. If you actually looked at the numbers from 1990, I think it is, from the district with the highest amount of people, now we're talking over 3 million people, from the highest district to the lowest district, there was only a difference of 7 people. So, I mean, they literally almost nailed it exactly. But this is the law of the land currently. All right? Well, in class, we're going to gerrymander something. There are 4 different ways to actually do it, and we're going to do an activity. Do your best to take the notes on this, and I will hold you responsible tomorrow in class. We will probably take a quiz on this. Have a nice night.